Hello and welcome to another episode of Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones. And Into the Afroverse is where we're taking Black folks into the future. Today, we're coming back actually to Into the Afroverse. I know we've been away for a little bit, and I appreciate people reaching out, trying to find out when the next episode is going to air and so forth. So here we are. And what's really great is today, I'm so excited to welcome today's guest. We're actually joined by multiple award-winning journalist and author, Denise Crittendon. And she successfully made the leap from newspapers and magazines to the world of fiction. Her Afrofuturist sci-fi fantasy novel, Weird Rains in Color, which was released in December of 2022, earned an Indie Award Project Award for the state of Nevada. And in 2023, Outstanding Book Award from the National Association of Black Journalists. So I'm really excited to talk about this book today. She's a veteran news reporter and editor, and she's a former staff writer for the Detroit News and the Kansas City Star, and past editor-in-chief of the NAACP's national magazine, The Crisis. She was the first female journalist in the history of the NAACP to hold this position. Back in 1999, she founded the African American Family Magazine and served as its editor until 2008. And I go on, but I really want to get into talking with today's guest. And once again, we'd like to welcome Miss Denise Crittenden. How you doing today, Denise?
I'm doing great. How are you, William?
Doing well, doing well. Once again, thank you so much for joining us here on Into the Afroverse. Truly appreciate it. So I got a little bit of the backstory in terms of the writing. What was it, or what is it, that moved you from writing as a journalist to being involved in this Afrofuturistic movement?
Yeah, thanks for that question. That's a good question. People ask me that all the time because it is unusual. Generally, when journalists write books, we write nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
But even though I was a journalist for all of those years, and I'm going to go with between 30 and 40 years, but always in the back of my mind, I had my imagination was going wild. And I think what I've done with the book that I've just my debut sci-fi novel is that I've managed to combine the two because I always focused on social issues and social justice. And I always focused on concerns that uplifted people. I'm doing that. I'm just doing it in a different way. I'm allowing my imagination to percolate, which is what it loves to do and what I was dying to do. And I'm addressing issues as well. Now, I was having dreams all the time, William. I was having these strange dreams, and I've had them all of my life. And one night they culminated into this really powerful dream about this woman. She was standing on a cliff. She was being taunted by these beings, and I didn't know what it meant. I just woke up, jotted down some notes, and stuck it in a drawer. But that was the impetus and the incentive, and the way I really knew that I had to eventually leave journalism and write science fiction.
Okay, so you're talking about these dreams. What
Yes.
was it about these dreams that was so like speaking to you where you knew you had to write this down?
Because you have dreams, right? You're in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
So I was having dreams that didn't involve me at all, like I was watching a movie or something. And that's interesting, and that
Yes.
kind of inspires you. And so this dream, these they were using expressions like the Anekotep tongue and all kinds of things I'd never heard of, and it just stayed with me. And I've always felt, because I have psychic dreams too, that if a dream stays with you, generally it's your something you're supposed to do something with. And I've always seen my dreams as my compass to help me navigate through life because I've had dreams that give me direction. But I've always read and I've always felt that if a dream haunts you, it really, really means something. And this dream stayed with me. And like I said, I woke up, wrote it down, and stuck it in the drawer. Unfortunately, it sat in my drawer, those notes from my dream, a long time before I got a chance to get to them.
And so how does it make the move from what gives you the confidence to take
Mhm.
it out of the drawer and move forward with this becoming a novel?
How did that happen?
Yes.
I was with the Detroit News for 15 years, and I was in between jobs. From the Detroit News, I went to the Crisis magazine, NAACP's magazine. But there was a year break. I won't go into why, but I had a break for a year. I didn't have much time. And so I took 6 months of that year to hastily, it may not have been a whole year, to hastily write this novel. So I wrote it quickly and then stuck it in the drawer because it needed more. It needed more work. And then I took the job with the NAACP, and that was so consuming. I was editor of a magazine, so that took a lot out of me. From there, I went to another magazine, and I launched that magazine. I was hired by a publishing company that published other magazines to do one for Black families. Again, very consuming. So I didn't have time to think about that novel. So I didn't get back to it until I left the magazine. So I think that answers your question, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like, how did it? Yeah.
So before we get into this book in particular, you talk about being part of the NAACP and being part of the legacy, really, of the Crisis magazine. What was it that brought you to the NAACP and your interest in kind of guiding, the Crisis magazine at the point that you did?
Well, I always wanted to edit. I mean, in addition to wanting to write science fiction, I've been teaching at journalism at Wayne State. I would do that after hours, after work. It was a feature writing class, and I didn't just suggest to my students what to do when I would edit their papers. I would edit them like I was an editor of a newspaper, and I explained to them this was their future. So I sat them down and I edited that way. I went through and gave them examples of what works, what doesn't work, use the kind of marks we would use, the copy editing symbols, and I went over their papers carefully like that so that they would grow. And I felt that was preparing me to be an editor.
Gotcha.
And I found out about the NAACP job. I had applied for a job to teach students. I think it was Norfolk University. There was an opening, and then there's only one opening. I didn't get the job, but they were aware of me, and they knew that my strength was editing in that regard, and they referred me to the Crisis magazine. And I thought, what an opportunity!
Exactly.
I had a publication founded by W.E.B. Du Bois. I couldn't have been more honored.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so what is it that you feel in terms of what you were able to accomplish with the NAACP and Crisis magazine? How does that help you now as you're moving into the realms of science fiction and Afrofuturism?
It's weird that you're asking that because every single thing we do, and that's all of us, you, everyone listening, everything we do is part of a puzzle. And that was just one puzzle piece because writing a novel is very elaborate. And I think going from newspapers to editing a historic journal and editing other writers it was more of a building block. I can't say that the civil rights issue contributed to the novel because that was something I already knew anyway. And I lived in Zimbabwe for a year. I'm not sure I mentioned that. I took a leave of absence from the Detroit News, and I applied for a scholarship, a Rotary Foundation scholarship. So I spent a year in Zimbabwe. That significantly influenced the novel. Under my understanding of civil rights, which I kind of sort of already had, and my understanding of how to edit, I think everything in my life has kind of prepared me to write novels. So I can't just say specifically the Crisis.
Got you. Got you. So let's talk about it. Your work, Where It Rains in Color. Can you give us a synopsis of what the book is about?
Well, that's kind of hard to do because it is kind of complex, but in a nutshell, we have this glittering, beautiful, midnight Black woman that you can see her picture on the wall. And she is revered, not as we know in our society, despite the fact that she's Black. She's revered because of her high melanin content. So I've created a galaxy. We're actually a periphery of the galaxy. We're still in the Milky Way. I created a planet where Black people are, lack of a better term, large and in charge. We're leaders of the galaxy. And other planets nearby in their coalition all revere the people of Swazembe. I've said it 5,000 years in the future. The Earth is no more. It still exists, but it's just a hull of itself. And they actually visit the remains of Earth sometimes and explore it and all of that. So what we have with this beautiful woman is that she's about to be named the rare indigo, which makes her the most beautiful woman in the galaxy, but she starts starts having some challenges. In order to deal with those challenges, she has to go off to this asteroid where this group of people who are not accepted in the coalition of planets that Swazimbi governs. This group of people claims to have a cure, and they've proven that they have a cure for what's ailing them. And she and others are on this asteroid. She begins to tap into latent powers. She's been so focused on beauty. That's kind of a ploy. I do that because I'm flipping beauty standards and I'm elevating Black women, but at the same time, we're challenging beauty at all and saying, what is it? Why does it matter? And that's what she discovers when she discovers there's so much more to her when she can communicate with the ancestors from her. And she begins to traverse time. And in her mind, her spirit travels back through time, and she can enter the bodies of the ancestors, people like you and me, we're experiencing, heal us. And in fact, she is heavily influenced by their immediate ancestors, the Dogon tribe of Mali, West Africa. Are you familiar with the Dogon?
Yes, yes, I am.
Should we talk about them?
Please do.
Right, yes. So we have to tell all of the listeners that in Africa, in West Africa, Mali, there is a tribe. Now, Swazimbi is fictitious. That's a planet I created. The Dogon are very real. They live on cliffs. They live in mud huts, but they know more about the solar system than astronomers here in the West. And people are startled and amazed by that because they feel like, how do you know all of this with no technology? So if you ask them how they know, they'll say that beings visited them on a spinning arc, and these beings, they call them the nomos, taught them all they know about the cosmos. So if you're writing speculative fiction, you always answer the question, what if? So my what if is, what if it's true? Why wouldn't it be true? Why would they make that up? And where did they get the information? So if it's true, then prior to the transatlantic slave trade or during the transatlantic slave trade, wouldn't they have said, could they possibly have said, do some of you want to get out of here?
Right.
We'll transport you to another planet. You can start your own world. You don't have to deal with all this. And so on Swazimbi, these are the descendants of the Dogon.
Excellent. And, in your response, I heard so many different things that I want to talk about. And
Right.
that popped out at me, and you brought it up as well. Standards of beauty. As you were researching for this book, and I do want to talk about the research part of it, because I think that is so important for folks to, as readers and as writers, to understand the kind of work that goes into this. You have this inspiration to create this world, but you still got to put in the work to kind of bring it to life and flesh it out. But with beauty standards, that's a constant issue in Black circles, both in the United States and around the globe. What did you discover that you didn't already know when it came to beauty standards, either through your research or as you began to flesh out the character? Because when we hear it, we just kind of, at its most simplest, saying, Black is beautiful, self-acceptance and things of that nature. But was there anything else that you discovered as it relates to beauty standards and Black folk around the world? Or did it kind of did you already kind of have a good understanding of it as you were writing?
Well, because the book evolved over time, because I couldn't come up with the idea and sit down and write it then and there, and I was growing. I had the idea, the dream, stuck the notes in the drawer, went to this job, went to that job, and then got back, had a chance to write it, then had to stick that in the drawer and come back. Over that time period, there was a lot happening. One thing that happened is that I'm a Trekkie, and on Star Trek, they visited an all-Black planet. They didn't go deep enough. They didn't elevate us in the way that I would like. And I'm not going to criticize Gene Roddenberry's team. I think they did a good job. But as a woman of African descent, there's so much more I wanted to do with it. I wanted to explore the texture of hair. I wanted to talk about some aspects of hair that defies gravity that you wouldn't expect white writers to deal with. I also happened to attend the melanin lecture. And when I attended that lecture, I discovered that if we were able to channel melanin properly, if we weren't beset with all of the problems we are as people of the African diaspora on the planet Earth. If we believed in ourselves more, I mean, lots of ifs there.
Right.
What could we do with melanin?
Yeah.
According to the speaker, we could live hundreds of years, and that's why in Swaziland they live to be about 400 or 500 years old. With melanin, theoretically, if channeled properly, you should be able to regenerate your lungs. With melanin, we should have this understanding, this ability, and we see aspects of it. We see it in our rhythm. We see it in, you see the Black athletes that they study and they don't understand how they are so, how they can accomplish so much more. And according to the speaker, you have athletes like Michael Jordan that he says is practically radioactive. You see it in the women in Africa carrying loads on their heads that it should be impossible for them to carry, not using a single hand and walking with a gait and just strolling across the savannah like there's just a feather on their head. So we see little tiny aspects of it, but it could be so much more. So these are just some of the things that were going on and I was discovering and learning. Last but not least, Psychology Today published a study. In this study, this researcher, for some reason, was out to prove that Black women were, wait for it, unattractive.
Wow.
Yes, I was incensed, and not only was I upset with the so-called researcher, I was upset that Psychology Today thought, that they published it.
Some validity, right?
They didn't publish it in the magazine, they published it online. When I first found out about it, Tamara, well, I can't think of her last name on the Today Show.
Oh, Chairman Hall?
Yes.
Yes.
Give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
She was the reporter who had to report it. And as you know, she's beautiful.
Yes.
I saw the expression on her face when she had to reveal these findings. It was so ridiculous.
Right.
So I'm saying that over the years, this was happening, that was happening. I was discovering this, I was reading this, I was finding out about this. So all of this was shaping my perspective. So when I sat down to finally really write and rewrite this thing, I was on a mission to uplift Black women. And I think that beauty is not the pinnacle for any of us in life. I'm sorry, it isn't. I think that it's basically based on superficial standards, but I felt the need to flip them because I have a couple of books that I empower young girls, right? I talk to young girls. And it seems like with the Black girls, there was always this issue with their skin tone. Yes. And I felt so bad. And I felt like this is just something society is doing to us. In fact, I remember hearing Toni Morrison say, we understand the physical effects of racism, but what about what's going on in the interior? When you have an entire group of young girls who believe that in order to validate themselves, in order to feel good about themselves, they must have at least one trait that's European.
Right.
If it's the blue eyes, if it's the hair, if it's the skin tone, they just feel like, just give me one. What kind of inner turmoil is that creating? But even though beauty is something superficial, and I've heard people even criticize, why is it not about beauty? Because it's not about beauty. It's uplifting an entire race of women. And then it's challenging it because there's a certain point in the novel where I have someone even challenging the Swazimbians because of their admiration of melanin, challenging them and saying, who are you to decide that that's the standard for beauty?
Right.
Well, it's all there because we don't see with our eyes, William. We see through the lens of social conditioning. So those are all the things that you see rolled into this novel.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. And so in terms of the research, when it comes to the history, you mentioned the people of Mali and so forth. What other things did you discover when it came to the research as relates to history?
I learned about the Dogon. My only real research was researching the Dogon, looking up things about the Dogon, understanding their deities, nomos, and then understanding what inspired them and what they believe. As far as the other aspects of the book, that was life happening because I was growing. Should I just tell you that when I first had the dream, it was 30 years ago.
Wow.
So then I have this part. So it was life was my research. And then the dreams returned.
Mhm.
When I actually got a chance to sit down and write them, I started having more dreams. So I can't say that with this particular book, I did any in-depth research beyond researching the Gone tribe. The rest of it was my imagination and what was happening all around me in terms of life and the fact that I'm watching Black women face discrimination when we decide to embrace our natural hair, then we're told it's not allowed in the workplace. Then when we wear weaves, we're told, then they laugh at Black women, why are all of you wearing weaves? Why are you doing this? Now the relaxers are damaging. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right,
what are we expected to do? And then we wear our hair natural, and that's a criticism. So it's like, okay, time out. We have to put ourselves up, up, up the scale. So this character, she's being called the rare indigo. So what I did is I took a skin tone darker than dark, blue
right,
black. And there
right.
was a time you called someone blue black, that was not a compliment. Again, why not? Who comes? I
Exactly.
mean, I'm just like challenging these standards, So, and then I have the lighter women being honored as tawny dramatic because I feel like we're a rainbow that's not being uh, like celebrated with this rainbow of colors, and we don't have fun with that.
Right.
I'm having a little fun with
Excellent, excellent. How would you say, in addition to everything you just mentioned, how else does your work, this book in particular, fit into today's world in terms of politically, maybe economically? How does it address, how does it help us through reading your work in 2024, moving into 2025?
how does it help us?
Yes,
Well, it helps us in terms of self-acceptance. That was my main goal. And it helps us in terms of opening our eyes and dreaming of a better tomorrow. Whenever I talk to a group, I love to begin with the past may be stained, but the future is absolutely spotless. That's an anonymous quote I picked up from somewhere.
right.
And I want us to understand that as people of African descent, sure, there are challenges here in the now that we have to deal with, but we have to look ahead. So I think it helps us because this genre is called Afrofuturism. And
Mhm.
Afrofuturism is so important because I don't want us moving into the future with the same baggage. So Maya Angelou told us that we are the hope and the dream of the slave. So slaves on the plantation, someone had in their mind somewhere, is there going to be something better tomorrow?
Right.
And most of them would not believe if one of them reincarnated, and I'm sure we are reincarnated, I believe,
Mhm.
but that's another issue altogether. They would, or they were catapulted into the future, they would be shocked. Well, what is it that can shock us in the future? And shouldn't we start thinking that way? Shouldn't we start behold, beholding ourselves? When I talk to groups, I also like to refer to Black people, Black women in particular, women of color, as people of the global majority.
Right.
So I'm trying to redefine who we are. I don't want us to always wear that robe of others' descriptions of
Yes.
who we are. I don't like the idea that we're allowing society to define who we are, what we should look like, who we should be. So if nothing else, this book gives us a different definition of what we bring to the table. Because like I said in Swazimbi, we lead the galaxy, everyone wants to be like us. And a beautiful picture of Africa. We don't hold Africa in as high a regard as I feel we should, as I
Right.
know. Africa, the time I spent there is so enchanting. It is so mystical. So I wanted to present some of that African mysticism and let us question. We started doing that with Black Panther.
Right.
Um, I was so pleased to see that happening. But the only thing is, we do it in terms of looking at Wakanda and not understanding there's a real Africa, a
Right.
continent with 54 nations, and they're all exciting in their own way. So I created Swazimbi, which is fictitious, but we deal with Nigeria and Mali and Ghana and talk about those parts of Africa as well.
Excellent. And you know, it's interesting that you should bring that up because in as much as I thought we were kind of turning the corner on our perceptions of Africa, I'm talking about Black folk, you know, with the way that social media has kind of opened up the world to us and so forth. You know,
Mhm.
just the other day, I saw some commentary. I'm not even going to mention guy's name, but a former athlete was commenting on the United States almost losing to South Sudan in a basketball game. And the way he spoke of these athletes from South Sudan, it was horrific, to put it mildly, in terms of the way he described them. And it was a throwback to all these racist tropes and stereotypical tropes that, you know, that I'd hoped by now Black folk had abandoned. So it's still
Black
important.
man,
Say again?
a black
Yeah, it
athlete.
was black athlete.
Oh,
And it was a throwback to every stereotype, every trope that you could imagine spoken about of African people. And I saw it and I just said, wow, I thought, or I hoped that we were beyond that. So for you to reemphasize the need to put Africa and continue to put Africa in this positive, realistic light, that is something that is still needed even in 2024 with all of the information we have right in front of us. So I think that's very important. The other
you,
thing that you talked about that I think is of importance because it speaks to a similar issue is this idea of language and challenging us to change our language because it kind of forms the way we see ourselves and see others. And I always challenge people on the use of the term minority. So I love that use of global majority. Is there any other language through your dreams, through your work? Is there any other language that you kind of create or develop on your own in this book or any of your other work?
yes, on Swazimbi.
Hmm.
Greet each other with the greeting waves of joy. That's the way they say hello. And if you say thank you, you'll say waves of thanks. And that's because waves, that's the way energy travels through the
Right.
universe. And we are more energy than we are matter. Some just celebrating energy. This, they call it, they like energy and light. So if someone is the younger people, if
Hmm.
someone is teasing someone, or like acting a little jealous, whatever it is, they'll call them a light stealer. So
Wow.
that's another terminology. There's another expression is the Swazimbi has a coalition. It has created a coalition of planets, neighboring planets. And again, Swazimbi is the lead planet, and this is the one that's head of the galaxy. Everyone wants to go to Swazimbi. It's actually a tourist site, right?
Okay.
And on the I'm sorry, I should have pointed that out. On the planet, the surface of the planet, there are floating colors. There
Okay.
rains. It does literally rain in colors. So it's a really fascinating place. But the Swazimbians are open and loving, and even though they are an insular society, the tourists visit, and among the coalition, they've taught the white members of the coalition from some of the neighboring planets how to do something they call it MST. And MST stands for mental self-tan. So if you're powerful enough and strong enough and you exercise that mental control
Hmm.
and understand the power of the brain, the power of the mind, which is something Lalila, the protagonist, discovers when she taps into her power. If you can do that, you can actually hold a tan and like they darken their skin. So they can do that. And only the real disciplined people can actually do that. So that's another expression that they use. They refer to their parents as your mother would be your elder mom and your father your elder father. What are some other expressions that they might use? Can't think of any right now, but yeah,
Right.
it does have its own vernacular. They speak kind of formally because they're just kind of they're kind of highbrow that way. They
Right.
have a, a governing body known as the nobility. The nobility you never see, but you will see from time to time the Alluri. The Alluri are actually, they're governed by the Alluri, and the nobility are the figureheads. So yeah, there's
Excellent.
there.
Excellent. Now that you mention it, was there any thought given to or within the book, does it speak to the economy and how they would, you know, trade or engage in that type of area of human activity.
Their economy is fueled by tourism. Because in addition, everyone wants to come to Swazimbi. It's the resort, it's the like how people want to go to Hawaii.
Yes.
The dream place is go to Swazimbi. You get to go to the surface and see the floating colors. That's magical. You get to observe and see the most beautiful woman in the galaxy, the rare indigo, because the rare indigo has this ability to shimmer. So when she shimmers, her skin is so brilliant, it just shines and casts this light, and it's an amazing thing to experience. In addition, in Swazimbi, in the underground, because they live underground, the colors on the surface are too hypnotic. So in the underground, they travel from place to place in a force of winds called the sweep. So you stand on your site, like if you're waiting for a bus, but nothing pulls in front of you, you're just absorbed into this current, and you fly through the current. So that's spectacular. So tourists love Swazimbi. So tourism is the main industry. So that's what fuels them. I think you were saying their economy. They have they don't have a hierarchy in the way that we sense it, but there is always going to be some level of socialism, because you have people on top. You have the nobility, and you have the Uluri, and you have the upper class, which is Lalila, the rare indigo, and the scientific pineal crew. They're more the upper class, the elitists. And then you have the everyday class, you have the working people, and you have the people who just decide, I'm just going to chill. Those people live in an area called Center. Center free is where you just live for free, and they live in the artwork. So the artwork, you'd have a huge, maybe a huge box, and there's a door. So I'm going to say, when I say huge, we're talking like a tower, like 25 feet or something. I'm sorry, not 5 feet, 25. How would you put it? When something is a tower and you have 25 floors, how tall would that be? Well, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
They actually have created the artwork, and those who don't have the economic means, they can live there and don't have to pay anything.
Wow, excellent. And another thing that comes across in this conversation and also in your descriptions, spirituality. So in writing this, did it strengthen your spirituality? Did it challenge it in any way? Did it change it in any way?
They pray to the grace of the ancestors, and it did not strengthen my experience, my spirituality. It allowed me to express my spirituality.
Wow.
And because I'm out of town right now, let me read a few. One of them that I remember that's one of my favorites is because, like I said, I flip beauty standards, focus on beauty as the novel begins. Then as we go through the novel, I challenge it. Like, what is beauty? Why are we making a big deal out of it?
Right.
And so one of the closing quotes is, beauty is when gratitude makes love to the eyes. Wow. That's an aspect of spirituality. But here's some other ones that I can call up real fast. Okay, here's one. Right. And again, these are all reflections of the way I perceive spirituality. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. So it's throughout the book. A burning stone can damage the fingers, but a burning memory can destroy the heart. The wise will release them both. Okay. If I had a book with me. Okay. Don't hold tightly to any experience. Let go so that it might become a note in life's eternal song. And that reflects my spirituality, because I believe that's what universe needs: one verse, one song. And I believe that as we move through life, our experiences are just part of that song.
Right.
So, and among the weeds of a selfish heart, the flower of wisdom suffocates. So those are a few.
Excellent. So with this bringing your spirituality, using this as a platform to share your spiritual ideas and folks that have
Yeah,
come before you.
yeah.
Uh, what is it that you're trying to do for me, the reader, in terms of taking this approach?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because the quotes that I just read to you, they
Mhm.
begin the chapters of the book. So what I did is I gave the quotes to like the Alluri, they're the governing body, so I would call it their the Alluri um kind of the Alluri prophecies or something, or I would call them Swazimbian proverbs,
Yes.
or call them notes from someone's journal. But it's my way of planting seeds and spiritual ideas. Since I don't have it in front of me, I'll just try to paraphrase one of them when I try to explain something that I really, really want would like for people to understand, and that's that every cell of our body is a living entity. So we need to kind of talk to the cells of our bodies, listen to the cells of our bodies,
Wow.
and hear and kind of have that communication going. So I have one uh, saying that begins a chapter that actually explains that it kind of explains that one. And what are some others? Oh, I wish you had the book in front of
I
you.
do.
Oh, you do? Okay, flip
Okay.
through. Let's see which one.
Which one am I looking at? What
Yeah,
am I looking?
but go to any chapter
All right.
and read one.
Oh, so let's see. I'm just going to start with the first chapter. At
Yeah,
the, at the proverb at the top.
yeah,
Okay. In the mind of the rebel, laws do not have eyes.
right. Go to
Okay.
go. I'm gonna pick one arbitrary chapter. Go to the fifth chapter.
The fifth chapter. Let's see. We got
Yeah.
3, 9. Okay, here we go. Fifth chapter. It says, when visitors from the west came upon them, the Dagon said to them that a strange ball had come from the high above the cliffs, and out of the sky it fell. From the clouds, the ball dropped behind distant hills and landed on the floor of Africa.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know we were talking about the Dagon, right?
Exactly.
What's the next chapter?
So let's see what we got here. All right, to it. Don't hold too tightly.
Oh, we already did that one. Go to
Yep.
another one.
All right. Let's move a little bit further to the back. Okay, so I'm in one of the later books. Yesterday never left. Tomorrow's always here. They both live and breathe in our collective soul.
Yes, everything is now, and that's really important for me to convey that. And then there's one aspect where and I don't know what chapter that is. When I say it's from Ohanate's journal, but it's
Right.
one of the beliefs is that we we look at we might look at something and call it a stain. And how do we know that that's not a form of beauty? What I don't know. I don't
I
remember
got
the full quote, but it's another one like that. And then there's another quote from Ohana's because uh, Lalila is the rare indigo, but the previous rare indigo fled and didn't want the title
okay.
because she was just overwhelmed by it and just didn't like it. She didn't like all the fuss about beauty. And she says that she felt she didn't like being a prisoner of their gaze, and it made her feel no more than a spray of dust. So I get to explore all of those ideas and use them as the epigraphs that
Mhm.
open each chapter. And some of them are from my journal. And I think my favorite one, I wish you could find that one. And I just talk about um, how we see objects blowing down the street, like you see a scrap of paper, an old cup that's thrown out, and the wind's blowing it. We can't see the wind. We can only see the wind, observe the wind through the objects that it moves. Well, how do we know that that they're not representative or symbolic of us? Because
Right.
we have this energy that moves us for a short time and then it moves on. And so as we
Awesome.
live these, yeah, so
No, that's awesome. I like that. And what I like is the way, and this is one of the things when you talk about Afrofuturism that I enjoy about it, this interconnectedness. So
mhm,
you're able to talk about standards of beauty, how that influences the culture, how that's a result and the product of the planet that they live on, and how all of these things inform these thoughts that you're sharing. And you even get into, like you said, the economy and also health. It just, like, learning from your book, if we just come to understand that individual cells within our own bodies are living entities, how much better will we treat ourselves if we saw ourselves like that and saw other people like that? So I think it's
Right.
great the way you're able to bring all of these together, put it in an Afrofuturistic setting, and then come up with this book. How much of a challenge was it for you? I know you're influenced by your dreams and so forth and your vision, but how much of a challenge was it for you, or was it challenging at all, to bring all of these elements together to create this book?
I think that it's probably not the kind of book like when I first had the dream.
Mhm.
I probably couldn't have written it back then.
Okay.
I don't think that, I mean, I was spiritual then. I was doing a lot of reading. I consider myself as a person with depth, but I think I needed more life experiences. And so I don't think it was as much of a challenge putting it together because I was growing along the way and because I wrote it in stages. I had the dream, couldn't get to it. And then when I did get to it, when I was in between the Detroit News and the Crisis magazine, I wrote it really fast and moved on. And then when I went back to it, I had grown a great deal, had these insights. Then after I sold it, of course, the publishing company had some ideas and suggestions that that they wanted me to implement. One idea and suggestion, I don't know if you've noticed it, but it jumps out at people that there's no violence in the book.
Right.
Most science fiction has battle scenes,
Yeah.
and publisher did request that, and I said no. So that was just that's my own personal philosophy. I feel like if people are looking for that, there's enough of it out there. They don't have to find it here. And I really believe that we need to stop fueling that part of human nature to begin with. So in answer to your question, I think that it was not a challenge to pull all that in, but it may have been a challenge not to overwhelm people.
Okay.
And I hope I didn't do that. I hope I didn't do that. I think that whenever you have a lot that you want to say and you're trying to say it at one time, that it could be something that people could find a little challenging at first.
Mhm.
But I think that for people who were challenged, it was only the first couple of chapters. And then after that, they weren't anymore. So some people have to adjust to this world. In the back of the book, there's a glossary.
Mhm.
The glossary explains some of the new terms and principles and all that. So it wasn't challenging for me to write, in answer to your question. It was challenging for me to tone it down so that it wasn't too much at one time.
Excellent. As an Afrofuturist, as a visionary, what is your vision for Black folk around the world in terms of the future? And what role do you see yourself playing in bringing that to a reality?
Well, wow. I wish this would become a movement.
Mhm.
I see Black people around the world embracing ourselves as we are. I'm tired of us asking other groups of people to accept us.
Yes.
Enough of that already. I don't care if you don't accept whatever, that's your issue. I want us more than anything to know who we are, understand what great what greatness lies within us, to understand how much we've overcome, to understand the contributions of our ancestors, to get the fact that to really get it that Africa is an incredible continent, and that our ancestors and even our brothers and sisters who are there now have so much wisdom to impart if we just accept it. I want them to really get that. But I don't know that one book can do it. There are lots of books out there
Right.
that are attempting, and lots of writers that have been trying. So I guess they're just poco a poco, se va lejos, as they say in Spanish in Mexico, because it's just we're all just like chipping away at it a little bit at a time. So if we can just walk away from this book with just one of those things. Wow, I'm a little more curious about Africa. Or wow, maybe there is something special about us, or maybe our rainbow of colors is kind of a nice thing, or whatever. I kind of would love to see Black women wearing t-shirts, rare indigo on the back, a really dark Black women embracing that, and then to see a light-skinned sister wearing tawny dramatic and just saying, I'm not trying to be better than you, you're not prettier than me, we're all in this together. So if we could one day get there,
Right.
one day really, really recreate the grandeur that we had in Great Zimbabwe or in Egypt or in the Lost Kingdoms of Timbuktu, if we could one day somehow just celebrate,
Right.
and stop trying to be something that we're not. And I always tell people, I've told the girls this too when I talk to them, if we would love who we are more, and when I say love who we are, I'm not referring to loving the self that has all the additions that are Europeanized. If we would just love exactly who we are, love our dark skin, our full lips, whatever it is, and not care what they think, the rest of the world would fall in place and love us more.
Yes.
It would only, because that's what we would radiate.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
if we decided, look, I think Black people are exotic. I really think that there's so much about us that is so unique.
Right.
And in some ways, other races get it, but they won't acknowledge it because
Right.
we don't even acknowledge it.
No. Right. And it comes through in other ways. So, for example, now everybody's talking about hip hop. That's the thing. When we created it, it was done just for us, by us. We were talking to one another. We didn't care what anyone else thought. And look how that's radiated around the world. So that
Again,
same,
perfect example when you
yeah,
don't care,
right,
this is ours. Then
exactly,
right, when you decide this is only we can do this, and we
right,
like it, and we don't care what you think. Then
exactly,
oh my God, it has a ripple effect. That's a
exactly,
perfect example.
exactly. So, and you're hearing it, folks. That's what she's talking about, and I think that that's a great example. I think that's a great lesson. What you just described, and it's something that I hope more of us take to heart, and more importantly, pass it down to our children, because they're picking up on all the wrong messages in many ways about Black culture and Black history. And I don't want us to continue the mistakes that we've made. I want us to change it. And I think that your work and what you're talking about is going to be key moving forward in doing that. Speaking to that, is there any thought or any conversation of this moving off the printed page? I know when folks come up with great works, and especially in realms of Afrofuturism, science fiction, and so forth, many people start thinking, oh man, that would make a great movie, that would make a great television series, or even a great comic book. Is there any thought, any discussion of you taking it beyond the printed page?
Well, I have a literary agent, and she's shopping it around.
Okay.
I'm waiting to hear back from a certain producer right now. We were approached by one who passed, and now she's shopping it around to others. So, from what I understand from other writers, it can happen overnight, or it could just be a long process. I think that the book really lends itself to the big screen, especially when you think about a planet where it's rainy in color. That's
Right.
beautiful. Then when you think about there's this grandiose Black civilization, and you think about the garments similar to the garments that someone like Ruth Carter would design.
Yes.
Oh, it would just be spectacular to see something like that. So, and so Swazimbi in itself is just an amazing looking planet. There are um, 3 tiers to this planet. So there's the surface. There's actually 4 tiers if you think of the surface, but then the underground, you have the boundary circle where
Mhm.
only the Swazimbians are allowed. And then you have the outer rings, the first ring and the second ring. So I think, and it revolves. There's so many revolving hotels, and it's just really a fantastic looking place.
Yes.
So I think a movie producer could have a field day with it. And in my imagination, I see it on the screen. But we have to see what kind of feedback we get. There's lots of books out there clamoring for that kind of.
Right, right. Well, fingers crossed for you. Fingers crossed
Yeah.
for you. How can folks find you? How can they find your work?
But, well, find me.
Find you, find your work.
Okay, they can find the book wherever books are sold. They can go to Barnes and Noble. They can go to their local bookstore. If their local bookstore doesn't have it, just ask for it and they can order it because it's in the system. Or they can get on Amazon, tried and true Amazon. It's always there. And they can find me on my blog, denisecrittendon.blog.
Excellent. So Where It Rains in Color. Make sure you go check it out, folks. Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
Well, your questions were pretty thorough. So I think this last thought, I'm just going to reiterate it one more time, that we don't see with our eyes. We see through the lens of social conditioning. So whatever you've been told is beautiful and you're clinging to that is what you were taught. Start expanding the way you think. And if you kind of like something and it doesn't fit the standards of society, if you say to yourself, I find that attractive, hold on to that, because that's the way we expand to a new Black aesthetic by creating it. And I would love to see a new movement like similar to the Harlem Renaissance of the 1930s and 40s, where there's this explosion of Black art and Black culture and Black people just celebrating what makes us special.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Denise, thank you so much for joining us here on Into the Afroverse. Truly appreciate it. And big part of the reason why I do this work is to introduce folks like yourselves to a new audience. Maybe folks haven't heard about you. So I'm encouraging everyone to make sure you go check out Where It Rains in Color, and also check out Denise Crittendon on her blog. You said it was Denise Crittendon blog.
Yeah, blog, yeah.
Yeah, .blog. So make sure you check that out as well. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you folks out there for listening. Truly appreciate it. And make sure you visit the website. You can check out past episodes at afrofuturismnet.com. And you can also check us out on the YouTube channel under Afrofuturism Network. One more time, thank you so much, Ms. Crittenden. Truly appreciate it. And a special shout out to Mr. Duke Productions for producing today's episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.